Hey guys, welcome back to the Great Outdoors. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're in the new 2022 Lund 1875 crossover XS. You can see we're here in the helm and we've got the giant Helix 15. It's a monster. I have a custom mount that I did. Let's see if I can get here behind the glass. Where I replaced the analog gauges and I did a custom mount for this. That works out really well. I get a lot of great visibility over the windshield and of course over here, and I just simply run my Vessel View mobile here to get a few key pieces of information off the engine, especially since I took the fuel gauge out, which was kind of half useless anyway. But what we're talking about today is losing ground when you're at speed. Basically, and I'm not in water right now, so the depth is kind of giving a weird reading, but what basically happens, and it's not unique to this boat, it happens on a lot of boats. When you get the boat up on plane, you lose this reading here, at certain speeds, right? And we'll go to the back of the boat. I'll kind of show you why that happens. And we're going to fix that today. We're going to install a secondary transducer. We're going to mount it a specific way so when you're up on speed and you're up on plane and you're cruising and you get to the higher speeds, this will still read and tell you how deep of water you're in. So stay tuned. So here's kind of your typical modern day transducer with all the advent of all the cool things they're doing now with electronics with MDI and MSI and all this stuff. These things have gotten, quite large, right? Here's my hand. I got a big hand and this is just massive. Now, when I'm running, the water is running underneath this and it's getting a good read and, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. As you start going faster and faster and faster, you're starting to get, some air bubbles down here. You're starting to get some water turbulence down here. It could be from a strake. It could be from rivets. Could be from whatever. And as you start to go even faster yet, and you get more on plane, really in the case of a Lund, it really sits more on top of the water, more so than other boats. And other boats, of course, sit up higher too. But nothing unique to Lund, but Lunds sit really high on top of the water as part of their design. So when you start getting, little water or air bubbles here and some turbulence, now you start to lift this out of the water a little bit, it basically it can't read. It's sonar, not radar. So it needs the water, and, the water is either disturbed or it's coming out of the water, and you just simply lose what's there. So here's the part numbers that I'm using for this install. First thing you need is this Humminbird transducer. There's the part number. This is their basic transom 2D sonar. It's often referred to as a high-speed transducer. I'll explain that in a little bit. The other thing you're going to need is this Y cable. Now be careful, Humminbird makes a few different Y cables for different things. So this is the one you're going to need for this install. And there's that part number. And the last thing I'm using, which is really more optional, you don't need it for this install, but I've chosen to use it, is this mounting bracket, and there's that part number. And it's a metal mounting bracket, and I'll go over why I'm using this here in a little bit. The reason why you don't need it is because this one comes with a plastic breakaway bracket that I don't want to use. So again, this is optional, and in my case, it's recommended, but you don't have to get it. You can just get these two and be okay. We're going to do this install in two basic parts. One part's going to be the wiring. We're going to do this first, and the second is the physical install of the new transducer. Looking at the back of the packaging, here's all the models of service. So if you got an older model, you can take a peek at that. But basically any Helix model from the 5 all the way up to the 15, even though the 15 is not listed there, it'll still work. Now this cord is, like I said, it's a Y splitter. And if we take this piece here, it's got a little cap on it. Pull the cap off. Put that off to the side. If you were to plug in a transducer into the back of your Helix unit, it's going to look like this. The amount of pins may vary depending on what features your transducer has and features your Humminbird has. For example, this one's got 2D sonar, it's got MDI, it's got MSI. You may only have DI, for example, and OSI or MSI, etc. So the amount of pins will vary, but if you look at this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pins. And what this splitter does is will literally do that. It'll take some wires. You can see one of these lines is thicker than the other, but it'll take some of them and put it into one female end and some to another. So if we look at this, we look in there, you've got a bunch of pins in there. It looks like you got 5 of the 6 pins. If we look at the smaller one, we look in there, see if we can get in there. Not sure all the camera's picking it up, but you have 2. So 2 plus 5, that's 7. Well, there's only, 6 there because one of those is a ground and it's got to go to both. But basically what that's going to do is this one here at 2 is going to go to your 2D sonar, and it's just going to be 2D sonar. The rest of them will go to this one, which is the existing, in my case, MSI, MDI, and so on, and it'll function this. What that will mean is you cannot run the 2D sonar off of your existing transducer. It's been split off to this one. You're only going to be able to run it on the new unit here. So that's all this is doing. Wiring this up is pretty simple. I'll show that when we get to it, but that's an explanation of what this white cable does. We're going to talk about the mount next. This is the mount that comes with the unit. I'm keeping it here in a plastic bag because I want to hang on to it, keep all the parts together. But it's just like you see there. It's plastic. Your transducer fits in here. This goes on the boat. It's a 2-piece, so this is the piece the transducer hooks onto, and then there's another piece that hooks onto the boat. And what it's meant to do is, you see these little nubs here, it's a breakaway. So if you were to strike something, a log, driftwood, rock, what have you, it's meant for this to flip up and potentially save your transducer. It's a good mount. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's a really good design. It's not terribly expensive to replace. I'm going to go for something that's a little more robust, and that's this metal one that's here. I don't have the breakaway, I lose that, but this metal is a lot more robust. You got some sliders there, you can raise or lower this a little bit. We'll get to the physical install here just in a moment. Again, you'll lose the breakaway, but it's a really rigid design. It's not going to go anywhere, again, by design. And I had this for my high-speed transducer on my last boat. I never had any issues. It got a couple of little minor bumps. It didn't seem to hurt it. Honestly, this transducer is not terribly expensive if you have to replace it. So it'll really be up to you whether you want to use, this metal one or the plastic one that it comes with. It's an added expense to buy the metal one for sure. It's really up to the user. They're both good options. I will say I do use these on the more expensive transducers. I have them mounted a little higher, and it seemed to work out pretty good. I also want to mention I had one of these fail on me once where I struck something, and it was actually really quite small. I was pretty surprised. And when I struck something, it broke off one of these little nubs right here, and I had to replace the unit, and that's how I ended up finding, the metal one here. So again, up to you. All right, enough on that. So as far as the install, it's pretty straightforward. You got the hardware here. You've got these little plastic deals here. They've got little ridges on them. On one side you've got small ridges, hopefully the cam's picking it up. On the other side you got bigger ones. The bigger ones will go on the transducer side, and the smaller ones will go on the mount side because, again, I'm not sure the camera's picking it up, but there's small ridges already here. And you kind of have to line all this up correctly. Get those on there. Get your transducer on there. It may take a little bit of work to do. There you go. So once you get all the plastic kind of knobs lined up like this, that's your starting point. And then take your bolt. I got a washer on there already. Run that through. Should be nice and easy like that. I have another, here it is, another washer here. That'll go on the end like that. And then your nylock nut. You can tighten it up some, but no need to really tighten it up because you may end up, once you get it on, you may adjust this, but that's what it should do. It should click like that. If it's not doing that, if it's just kind of hanging there, then, you know, go ahead and realign this thing. You didn't do something right. But yeah, again, don't tighten this up till you get it on because you may want it here. You may want it there, right? So we'll do that a little later. Obviously, we're here at the back of the boat. We're going to talk about mounting the new transducer. You can see I've got the existing transducer from my Helix 15 already here. This was a dealer installed option. And they honestly did a pretty good job. It's actually, they're pretty good. It actually reads the bottom pretty well in my case up until about the low 40s, 42, 43 miles an hour. Then I start to lose it between, you know, the low 40s and close to 50. And it's mounted correctly with where the bottom of the boat is and where this is mounted. Basically, if you were to have a piece of wood here, you know, you want the transducer read part, you know, in line with that bottom of the boat and the housing, you know, at or above the bottom of the boat, if that makes sense. And when you talk to Humminbird, they're going to recommend the same type of thing with this. There's a shiny part here, that's the read part of the transducer, and this flat black part, which is just the housing. They're going to tell you the same thing, at least as a starting point. You know, have this below the boat here and have the flat part above the boat. So think about that when you go to mount this, because you can have it, you know, here, you can have it here, you can have it up, you can have it down. In my last boat, I actually mounted another transducer plate on the other side of the motor, mounted it there, and I'll explain that in just a moment. And wherever you mount this, you'll get a little bit of a different effect, some favorable, some not. You know, so to explain that, so this is set at a certain height, it's already here, right? I'm not starting from scratch. You may be, you may not be. And let's just say I had this, you know, all the way up here. Now, I wouldn't do that, obviously, but let's just say I had a bit of difference between the two of these. Remember, this is your 2D sonar, and this is everything else. So if you're looking at your MDI, you know, your down imaging, and it's reading at this height, and you have this all the way up here somewhere, you know, it's your 2D sonar, it's, you know, 3, 4, 5 inches, whatever that is, different. So your view through your Humminbird is going to be off by at least 3 or 4 or 5 inches, whatever that is. So having this a little bit closer in height is something you want to consider. An inch or so, honestly, it's not going to make a difference. You're not going to be able to tell, but anything significant, you might. Another thing to consider is how far away do you have this from here? Because this is going to put a cone down to get its view. This is going to have a cone down to get its view. Now, this is dropping a cone here. If I have this, you know, right here, this is 6, 7 inches away, whatever that is. I have a cone dropping here. they're so close, it's not going to matter, and they're not going to interfere with each other either. You know, your view on your graph is going to be, it's going to look identical. Conversely, if you have another transducer plate, like I mentioned before, on the other side, you're going to have a cone down here, and you're going to have a cone down all the way on the other side of the motor there. And that may give you a little bit of a different image. I did that on my last boat. I had a reason for that. It didn't seem to bother the graph much. I mean, the cones were, you know, a couple feet apart, but it looked okay in the graph. It didn't seem to make that much of a difference. Another thing to consider is, you know, the size and weight of your boat. Now, this is again a 2022 1875 crossover. It's not a little boat. It's not a huge boat, but it's not a little boat. The boat I had before was a Lund 1750 Rebel XS. Basically, it's a big Rebel. Today in Lund's lineup, they call it an Adventure. Slightly different, but basically the same boat. So it's kind of a medium-sized tweener type boat. I found when I had on that boat the transducers on this side that, especially the bigger transducer, it almost acted like a trim tab and actually lifted this side of the boat up when I was up on plane. And the boat, when it traversed, it didn't feel like it was on rails. It felt like part of it was being lifted. And that's why I put one transducer. Actually, I had two transducers on one side and one on the other. But point being, I had to kind of balance that out a little bit, and putting one either side fixed that. The last thing to probably consider is how much water spray you're going to get depending on where you put this. So when you have this here, partway buried in the water, or if you got it over here, wherever we end up putting it, you know, it's going to be a little bit lower in the water than this guy. You're going to get a little bit of water spray. Depending on how far you drop this, the more spray you're going to get, all the way up to you get what's called a rooster tail. Nothing really wrong with that. A couple things to consider is, you know, the water spray, you know, it's going to spray the back of the transom. It's going to spray, you know, a little bit on the motor. If you have a sport top or bimini top, believe it or not, when you get going, it has a way of kind of drawing some of that water into the back of the boat, getting some of your passengers and stuff a little wet. Not a physicist, but those of you that have done that, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And again, once you get this down a little lower, you'll get a rooster tail, which basically shoots a stream of water all the way up, and it looks like a rooster tail on the back of your boat, just made of water. And depending on how you got this angled, if you got this angled on something that looks like this versus straight up and down, that rooster tail may actually be hitting your cowling on your motor. So all kinds of things to consider when you mount this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount it. I am going to bury it a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit deeper than the recommended, you know, shiny part below the boat, flat part above the boat. I'm going to bury this a little bit because I found that works best for me. Again, there's some sliders there. I can still move this up or down a little bit once I get it going. And that's what we're going to do. And that'll be my starting point. And if I have to make any adjustments, it's just a, you know, half turn back on the screws, move this up or down, and then, you know, tighten it back up. You can do that. I've done it on the water before. You're getting your screwdriver wet, no big deal. Just don't drop it. You can do it here in the garage or at the dock, you know, whatever works. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, you can see I've got this started with just one screw in here, and you can see I can slide this up or down if I really wanted to, but I got it at the starting point that I described. What I should mention is this is the screw or set of screws that come with the unit, and they're nice screws. They're stainless. There's nothing wrong with them. I don't like that they're, you know, a flathead, but you could probably put you know, a ratchet on there, something if you really wanted to. Problem I have with them is they're a little long, and they would go through the hole here, and they're so long that they would actually go past the transducer plate and start to drill into the transom. And the whole idea of having this plate here is I've got two screws in the boat and everything else screws into this, so I'm not putting any more holes into the boat. So I've opted for a little bit smaller screw here, and it's a Phillips, so a little bit easier for me to manage. And that will just go through the plate and into the transducer plate here. And I've used these in the past. You know, they work pretty good. Sorry, I don't have the exact measurements with me. I pulled them out of my spare parts box, but you may want to consider going with a little bit smaller screw as the point. Now, currently my boat is not sitting completely level on the trailer, so I'm just gonna take this, and of course my bubble's way off there, but I can see at least that it's touching the line there, or a little past the line in that view there. You can do it here on the transducer, you can do it up here on the plate. The wire's in the way, so I'm just gonna do it here in the transducer. So with that in mind, and I know this is level already, I'm gonna do the same thing here now that I've got it started, and I'm gonna just make sure this is lined up in a way where it's doing the same thing. It's just kind of touching the line, and yeah, about there. I'll go through and double check it off camera, but that's basically what you want to do. I think I moved that a little bit, but hopefully not too much. Okay, that's there. Now on your inaugural run, just to kind of test things out, you may want to just have the 2 screws in there, and again, test this height, make sure it's where you want it, up, down, whatever have you. Once you're satisfied with it, I would then sink in that 3rd screw, and then you know you're good. There we go. Now, you only have so many options on how high this is. It could be here, it could be here, and just like I showed before, right? You can get a level out and see what you have this other one has. Again, I'm on a trailer, I'm not exactly level, but I can still get a pretty good idea what I have here and line it up with this. I'm going to be honest with you, I can eyeball this and basically see if I've got it in line with this or not. And again, quite honestly, you can always change it on the fly if you need to. The next step is to take this transducer wire and start to run it up to the front to your helix. And this is probably the most difficult step in the entire process, but I've got a trick for you. So you can see we've got a hole here in the side of the boat. Yes, part of the boat's made of wood, and it normally has this axis cover on it. Lund likes to use these square head screws and bolts and stuff throughout the boat. So if you have a Lund, you've already got a number 2 head, square head tool with you. And my hands and arms are just too big to try to feed this underneath and try to stick my hand in here and grab it. So what you're going to need is a piece of rope or a long piece of wire. The wire seems to work a little better because it's a little more rigid. And you're going to want to tie one end to your end of your transducer. And you can see I've got it started here. And we're just simply going to gently pull. And I'm going to kind of help this along here a little bit so I don't pull my knot out. But we're going to pull this through. Now right here there's a screw right here. Not sure what that's for, but it's it'll scratch your arm up if you're not careful. Okay. Sorry if my head got in the way there trying to film that, but that's just it. Wrapped a little wire around the head. And now you've got it started, and the rest is going to run up underneath the gunnel here up towards the front of the boat. You may need to do the same thing here. In my case, I've got the added speakers, so running my hand behind that speaker, not really going to work. But running the wire, you know, certainly helps quite a bit. You will have to repeat that process until you reach that point. So here's our new transducer cable. We've got some cable management stuff here. So there's a little hider that you have to take out of the way. I took my balls out of the way. There's a piece of mesh here that my dealer put on, again, for cable management. That's no big deal. The least favorite part of my install here was this part right here. Getting that wire ran from back there all the way up here. But that little trick saves you a lot of time. Now in my case, I've got one of these guys, a little quick release plug that is just a couple of screws that they're right there that take the plate off. And we're gonna have to take the transducer portion of this out, just like that, and hook our Y into this. So before I tidy this back up, I've got this put back together, and here's your basic Y. So there's one cable coming out, now there's two. Everything else is as it was. This Y, I've got it run through this sleeve here, and keep in mind the thicker wire has to go to your existing transducer that has, again, your down imaging, the side imaging, whatever you got. And the smaller wire goes to your new transducer, which again is just looking at the 2D sonar. So whether you keep this here on top or you try to put it back down that hole, it's going to depend very much on you and your boat. I'm probably going to bury these in a sleeve here so it's serviceable, and there's some room here to manage that. So all there's really left to do is you know, get it cleaned up, get it put back together, and give it a try. As we're talking about cleaning up cables, we can move to the back. Now what I've done is left a little bit of play here. Not much, you know, you don't want to have this so far out where you're snagging seaweed or, you know, parts of tree branches or whatever, you know, is in the water where you're fishing or hanging out. But just a little bit, so if you want to move this over or up or down or something, you've got a little bit here. Secondly, you don't want to stress this. You know, this is already going to get a lot of abuse just being out in the water. It is what it is. So I used one of these guys here. I didn't want to have any more added to the boat, but there was one here from the dealer when they installed the original transducer that's down here. I added another one right here. Not into the boat, but into this plate. You can screw into this all day long. That's what it's for. And then have the wire zip tied in a couple spots here and one above this so it can't slide down. You just cut these off. Now, whether you have this sharp end facing, you know, towards you, or you put it, you know, towards the boat, that's going to be up to you. This might scratch the paint. It may not. It's really going to be up to you. Honestly, it's really not that sharp, so I'm just going to leave it there out of the way. And that's what it looks like. So we got the Helix 15 turned on. We're doing, I guess we can call this a bench test. We're in the garage, but it's reading the garage floor there on my 2D sonar. I'll have to get on the water this weekend and make sure the rest of this works. But so far so good as far as this cable hider or cable protector, whatever you want to call it, with a couple of zip ties or cable ties. I think I've called them both in this video. You get what I'm doing here. You know, this came out really well. I've got a little extra room underneath here to kind of hide some of that because I'm running a little bit longer length than I was before. But in my case, my boat is red and black. So a red and black, you know, cable protector like that, I think is a nice little detail. All right, guys, we're on beautiful Winnie Lake. I'm out here trolling around this island for smallies and northern. And we're actually on the Minnesota side in a place called Jackfish Bay, although we've been able to fish a lot of the Canadian side. Now that the borders have reopened, and you know, we can't get the fish COVID anymore apparently, so you know, it is what it is. Got the top up just because it rains on Rainy Lake, although I got some blue skies coming in. Don't mind the graph. It's a little dirty. We've been up here for a week already. Basically, just want to show you that everything works, right? I got my 2D sonar up in the corner. I've got my down imaging there, or really mega down. Of course, I got my map there. And give me a second here. Let's see if I can get one of my other views. Oh, pardon me, this one. I've got side imaging working. And so basically it's showing that everything worked with that Y cable. I am able to read depth at pretty much every speed. I've had it up to around 48 miles an hour, and it reads depth just fine. So I'll show that in a little bit. I'll show you the rooster tail that comes off, and you know, some of the things I may change up a little bit. I may not get it up to 48 right now because again, I've got the top up, but I can show you, you know, give you an idea of what it looks like at speed, and show you that the depth works as well. I'm going to show you what it looks like at speed. I have to apologize for a couple things though. One, we've been up here for about a week and a half, so I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up on my fish finder. Well, my boat in general is pretty dirty, so sorry about that. Two, like I said before, not going to be able to get the wide open throttle because I've got the top on and it's only rated for, I forget, like 35 miles an hour, something like that. I might get a little better than that here just briefly, just to show it. And three, just because of wind noise, and the engine's probably going to make a little noise going with the top on here. So it'll be a little noisy in here, but point being, you guys will be able to see this at speed and see that it works. Here we go. All right, guys, we're back in the garage, back from Rainy Lake. Had a fantastic time as usual and as expected. And if you caught the tail end of that last clip just a few moments ago, I turned around to see my rooster tail and show you guys, and there was no rooster tail. And then I turned around to see what my graph looked like, and I had no depth. And this is the reason why. You can see the carnage there. I lost my transducer. Oddly enough, as I'm filming this whole thing, trying to show you guys how great this is and how happy I am with the purchase, and it's working as expected. And it was working well, and it was working as expected, and it, you know, it did everything it was supposed to do. As I'm filming this, I hit something. No idea what it hit. It was underwater. And you know, the lake was really high this year, and there were some storms the night before, so I had some debris somewhere, and well, it's gone. I mean, you can see the holes there. It literally cut the wire here. I think it, well, we saved this. I think it's got a little crack and I'll have to replace that. So it's gone. In addition, this is probably an argument to not use the metal connector or the metal bracket that I used, similar to the one on the side imaging transducer here. Now, what I will say is I've had that metal bracket or one just like it for many years with no issues. In any case, it's probably saved the transducer, because when you hit it lightly, it doesn't go anywhere. Whereas the plastic ones, you know, I've had them break on me. So what I get to do, and I'm not going to bore you guys with the installing this again, but had to go to my local Bass Pro and get another one of these. And at the time of filming this, for midway through 2022, when I bought the one I installed here at the beginning of the year, I think it was like $89, give or take, plus tax. With all the inflation stuff going on, this is now $104. The exact same item, just $25 more. So what I'm going to do is reinstall this. I'll have to be to the left or to the right of that a little bit just to remount it. I'll have to decide if I want to use the metal bracket, get another one of those, or if I want to chance it and use the plastic one. Now what I will say is this plastic one is meant to be a breakaway, so this piece will flip up, but I find that it just flips up too often. You can put a third screw in here and keep it from flipping up, but then this plastic can sometimes just get, you know, brittle and crack. So there's no perfect answer. The plastic ones, they're okay. The metal ones are better, but you have the chance of, you know, doing this. So anyway, I'm going to do that install. I'm going to chase my line. I'm going to tie this to the line here and just kind of refeed it all the way up back up to the helm there. And this way I don't have to completely rerun everything. I can just pull from that end and pull the new line through and replace my couple of zip ties I have in there and just have all kinds of fun with it. So little unexpected ending to the video, but happy you guys watched it to the end because it was probably a funny story. And we're going to have more videos like this coming soon. So stay tuned, like and subscribe. See you soon.